Hello and welcome from Buenos Aires, Argentina to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where Nate has conversations with entrepreneurs doing business across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on those that have some connection to Latin America. My name is Josefina Dominguez and I am an editor for LatimList, a proud sponsor of the Crossing Borders podcast. Sign up for our weekly updates on latimlist.com to get a summary of the week's biggest headlines in Latin American tech news. Nate's guest today is Laura Mendoza, co-founder of Unima, which is a biotech company that develops fast and low-cost diagnostics for infectious diseases such as tuberculosis and currently for COVID-19. They talk about how low-cost diagnostics have the potential to help 3 billion people living in the developing world, how Laura and her partner decided to pivot from a solution designed for animals to one designed for humans, and what it was like to raise money as a biotech company in Latin America. We hope you enjoy this conversation with Laura Mendoza.
Hey Laura, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being willing to do it.
Thank you for having me, Nathan. It's a pleasure.
Where are you in the world today?
I'm in the city of Guadalajara, Jalisco, in Mexico. It's located in the same state that Puerto Vallarta is located, and we are the world's capital for tequila. So
that is a good introduction for Guadalajara. I think it describes it well. And tell me a little bit about what you're working on.
Okay, so I am one of the co-founders of a company named Unima. Unima is a biotechnology company, and we develop fast and low-cost diagnostics. Our goal is to solve the problem of lack of access to a timely diagnostic for 3 billion people that living in the developing world or in low-resource settings. So what we have found is that in the world, you can usually find any diagnostic to diagnose almost anything. The problem is that they are expensive. They require a lot of manual work, technical expertise, and they can require hours, days to provide a result. So they become irrelevant. So what we are working on is on a platform that will allow almost any person to diagnose a disease directly at the point of care in under 15 minutes and at a cost of that can go up to $5 per test. So the use is very simple. You simply take a drop of blood, saliva, urine, put it in a paper microfluidic device, wait for a little while, and then you take a picture with a smartphone application that will provide a result. And this result, along with contextual information like geolocation, date, time, gender, etc., will give information to decision makers on how to control a disease. So that's in a nutshell.
So talk a little bit more about how different the price is and if you can get price down to something that is more reasonable for people to be able to pay or health systems to be able to pay, what kind of benefits that might unlock in society.
So diagnostics now, and we are, when you hear this in the future, we are already in COVID times and people have been educated about the potential benefits that diagnostics have and also the potential drawbacks that they also may have. But the benefits of a very low cost diagnostic is that you can actually measure how a population, the incidence in a population looks like. Unlike diagnosis of just one person and the status of one person, here we are talking actually about the measurement of how a group of people, the status of a group of people for a certain disease. So you can understand how to manage the group and how to create better programs to actually control the transmission, the control, the treatment of that disease in itself. And for our specific solution, we are not talking about a COVID solution per se. We are talking about the solution that will allow the diagnosis of several diseases. So before COVID, we were actually working on a solution for tuberculosis, which is the #1 killer for infectious diseases worldwide. So after working in tuberculosis for a while and starting to make more solutions for infectious diseases on our platform, COVID comes along, and we have already mounted our solution for COVID in the same platform. And we did that. So we already have a solution for COVID, and we are going to start sales for our COVID solution in the few weeks. So those are the benefits, that it will give access not only to the person, to the patient, to a solution, to what should I do next, but it will also give information for governments and institutions to actually create better plans to control this disease.
So I'm going to dig more into Unima in a few minutes here, but I wanted to get into your background. Did you always know that you wanted to start a company, or was this something that came up during your career path?
Actually, I never thought that it could be. I was not even aware of the possibility of becoming an entrepreneur. My family is not entrepreneurial. So my father was actually a career man, and he always worked for international corporations. And that was what I specifically had in mind for myself. That's what I wanted to do my whole life until I started working and saw that so many problems are not being addressed that I actually started to think that somebody needed to address them. Along with one of my co-founders, that's how we started to think about becoming entrepreneurs.
How long after studying did you decide to actually go and start your own business? What was the time frame?
I finished my bachelor degree of engineering, chemical engineering, in almost coincides in December 1999, and I started working in January 2000. So it's exactly at that time. At that time, so I did not think about being an entrepreneur until 2003. That's when I started to think about it seriously. After being in the workforce for a little while and seeing, I had two jobs. One of them was working for a recycling company in electronics, and the second one was for Boehringer Ingelheim, which is for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, located in Germany. So I started working for the division of animal health here in Guadalajara, and that's specifically at that time saw the opportunities in biotechnology, saw the opportunities in animal health, and that's when we started to think, hey, we could do this, we could do that, we could continue. And it sounds funny. Your question for me sounds funny because actually I would think that was the rebooting of my second generation of studies. I went to school several more times after working with Boehringer Ingelheim and quitting Boehringer Ingelheim to become an entrepreneur, because while being an entrepreneur, I also went through several master's degrees. So it's been a long road. I'm talking here about 2003, so this is 17 years back. It's almost like school restarted, and we have been studying for many years. And that's not just me. That's also my co-founders. The three of them have gone to continue with preparing in biotechnology, studying master's degree, research projects, just to prepare ourselves for the road ahead.
So continuing to study and doing the multiple masters, when did you found your first company and what was it?
So our first company was founded in 2006, 2005-ish, 2006-ish. So, actually it was before that. In 2003, when we decided to become entrepreneurs, we already had the idea in mind. It's just that it was still a little while before we actually made the first step towards actually implementing, but we started going to incubators and preparing ourselves to, we had no preparation in financials, for example. We were not prepared to write a business plan. We thought it was extremely valuable to have business plans at those times. And it was because it gives you a framing. It gives you a framework to start working with and to understand business language, which was something we did not have. And that's what we started building an infrastructure inside ourselves to be able to understand what the business world was actually about. So our first company was founded in 2006-ish, let's say. And it was a company that developed a vaccine stabilizer for poultry. That vaccine stabilizer achieved sales in 14 countries in the world, including Japan and Russia, which are very difficult markets, through a partnership with a pharmaceutical company, which would do all the distribution. And we would concentrate on manufacturing. We filed for the patents and everything. And yeah, the product was there for a little while, and it had a certain level of success. And then we decided, you know what, this is a niche product with a certain level of reach. We now understand what registration is about. We now understand what clinical trials look like. We already understand several things. We want to do something more ambitious. So towards 2010, 2011, we decided that we wanted to continue our work at that time in animal health, and we wanted to do diagnostics for tuberculosis in bovines, so cows and all of that. And we made how do you say, a partnership. So we signed a contract with an institution that actually licensed to us the technology. This is a research institution in Mexico, to use our technology for diagnostics and for diagnostics in general. So we continued our work there for a little while. And in 2014, we were accepted to a program that you probably know, which is called Mass Challenge in Boston, Massachusetts Challenge, so Mass Challenge. And we went and traveled there with really nothing. And we exposed we fire tested our idea, and we suddenly realized the enormous potential that our platform and our technology have for human health. And that's when we pivoted towards, we decided that instead of just tackling animal health, we should tackle global health instead. And here we are.
One thing you mentioned was tech transfer, and having talked with both entrepreneurs and some universities across Latin America, it seems like it's one of the places that LATAM universities maybe aren't doing as well as universities in the US or in Europe, and that it's one of the big things where there's amazing research going on at many universities and research institutes in LATAM, but maybe it's not getting commercialized. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that process and how you see that part of the industry?
At least when I was more active in that area, it seemed to me, and we saw it time and time again, that the academic world, at least in Mexico, really wanted to have as much say in the technology, even if they would not be working in the technology anymore. So we saw a couple of times the technologies from the universities or from the research centers being transferred, and but they would have clauses that were really not beneficial for the entrepreneurs. For example, they would still be the universities would still remain the property over the patents. So at any time they could just take that away from the entrepreneurs. That would be too much power for the academies, for example, and schools, and that makes it really hard for entrepreneurs to actually be able to raise capital or to have investor trust that they will be able to take the technology forward and achieve something. So I have the belief that universities, schools, etc., would be better off if they say, hey, we are a school, we are a university, just give me my part in license fees and regalías. Give me that part that is for me. But yes, I will give you as much as I can freedom to operate. So if you give the entrepreneur freedom to operate, he or she will be so much more free to make decisions, so much more, will have much more freedom to convince investors. I think a lot of opportunities are missed that way. I hope it has changed. I am not so much looking into that anymore. I hope we understand where our strengths are as universities, as entrepreneurs, in order to add value where we should be adding value and not become too ambitious that we restrict the operation of the other party.
You mentioned a bit ago that your family were not entrepreneurs. They had traditional salary paying jobs, and you decided to go and start your own business. What was the reaction from your family and friends when you decided to go down this path rather than continuing to work for big institutions that would have secure, good paying jobs?
Actually, there's a underlying story there. So my father, at the time we decided to become entrepreneurs, he had become an entrepreneur a year before we had, just 1 year before. So he had started his own thing. So we were actually like in the family, from the family point of view, like following his footsteps. But it was really recent that he had just started his own business. So we started sharing a little bit of notes on that. And although my mother, in fact, she was a little bit more scared. She didn't know how we were going to be able to eat. She didn't know how we would pay rent. And so she would actually continually get me into deadlines. So she would be like, okay, so if this doesn't work in 2 months, what are you going to do? And then the 2 months came out. Okay, so in 3 months, if this doesn't work, this new idea of yours doesn't work out, what are you going to do? And I was continually in this trend of deadlines that lasted for about 3 years, I suppose. And then she saw that that we knew how to do it, that we knew how to survive, even though we were still growing a company, we were still figuring out registration things, and that it was really complex. And then she just said, okay, so this is what she wants to do. It's okay. But for a little while, I think she was a little bit worried.
And talk a little bit about what it was like going from kind of grinding at building something for animals to going to Mass Challenge and then deciding to pivot into doing a bigger opportunity for humans. What was that experience like?
Personally, and I will speak for me, not for my co-founders, but for me, it was so exciting because it just gave me so much more purpose. In health, in health in general, animal health is regarded as a profit center, but human health is regarded as a cost center. So humans cost while animals actually create cash flow, I suppose. So I had been reading at the time books about economic development, and it became clear to me that to have economic development, you only need a few ingredients, and those are nutritious food, guaranteed health, education, security, and off you go. That's when you really can develop a society. So for me, being able to contribute to that was really inspiring, and it got me like off my feet. It makes so much more sense personally than, of course, I still like animal health. It's super interesting, but human health, it's so much closer to home.
So talk a little bit about that actual pivot. Why this specific diagnostic business rather than anything else you could have done with your skills to build other things for human health? Why this one? Why is this problem so important to solve?
I'm going to focus my answer especially to tuberculosis, because tuberculosis is one of the, as mentioned before, is one of the biggest killers. And there are societies, I mean, if you take and just mix everybody up, if you would take 3 people, one of them has latent tuberculosis. And 1 out of 10 people with latent tuberculosis will develop tuberculosis itself. The incidence is very high, in countries in Africa and India, the incidence is very high. If you have the conditions of a poor country, people living together very close by, really close spaces with nowhere to be freshened up, people, it's very likely that the infection will continue. And it really has a big impact in the lives of people, because either they die, either they lose their jobs, either there's stigma around the disease. And this is really heartbreaking. And we had this technology for bovine tuberculosis, and human tuberculosis is not that different in the sense of diagnostics. And it's been really hard historically to diagnose tuberculosis correctly, fast, low cost, that anybody can do it. It's been difficult. So we saw the opportunity to contribute there with our platform, and we just started doing it. We started knocking on the doors of organizations that are closer to the problem, that are in the field, that know the people that have the disease, and everybody would get very excited for this possibility. So So that's what started us going on this road. I don't know if that answered the question though.
No, it's good. And the follow-up here is how different it is with a business that's dealing with human health versus, Facebook's original thing is move fast and break things. You can't really do that with human health. So talk a little bit about going from 0 to 1 to going from just deciding, okay, we have this technology to where you are today, where you have a test that can accurately diagnose different things.
So what I've seen with my entrepreneurial friends, the ones that are especially here located in Guadalajara, and that I have been so fortunate to follow up very close by because we are friends. It's like they are always like they're in fintech and they would be developing softwares for project development and all of that. And it was really a race. They are running the whole time. It's about how much can you inject as quickly to get the results as quickly as possible and to demonstrate traction as quickly as possible. And oh wow, we when we got to talk to mentors, and that many mentors would be very tech oriented, we would find that they wanted to treat us the same way a traditional tech company is treated, because you can really test software in real time while you cannot test a biotechnological product in real time. You have to wait for a lot of things, and a lot of steps are very time intensive, and you cannot just say, hey, let's pause this here. No, now let's just go fast forward 3 months. You cannot do that. And also we are in a very regulated industry. So we have all those constraints that make it difficult to just be able to demonstrate the same way traditional tech companies demonstrate traction. It's different for us. And we struggle with that from time to time. But when we have gotten to meet the right investor, the right mentor that has the experience in health, it's a whole different world. To speak the same language, it is required that the person we're talking to is familiar with biotech products, with the health sector, with bacteria and laboratory, all of that stuff.
You touched on it already, but talk a little bit more about what that's like raising money as a biotech company in Latin America. Are there LATAM investors who know anything about biotech, or do you have to go abroad to get money, or take money from people who maybe don't know much about the industry but believe in you as entrepreneurs and the problem that you're solving?
Mm-hmm. So it's a mix. LATAM investors specialized in biotechnology are few and far apart. So there are not that many. And we have probably spoken to most of them. Yeah, to most of them. So in general, I'm going to speak in general terms, but of course this is not true for everybody. In general, I have the perception that investors want to try out the models that have already been successful in the developed countries. So they want to take an idea that has been already successful in the US, for example, and just modify it a little bit to fit the regional characteristics of Latin America and implement it in Latin America. That's what I've seen that they want, or they understand, or they feel more comfortable investing in. It's sort of a already proven model that it's easier to understand that if I don't know, if the interest rate is this high, or if the motorcycle is regulated, or it's just easier for them. But if you speak about something completely different, which you're not familiar with, bacteria and diseases, all of them are completely different by themselves, and you're talking about Africa and you're talking about India, this starts to add up, and it becomes overwhelming at a certain point. So it's difficult to analyze with a complete understanding that they will have in more traditional ideas in tech. So that's been a challenge for us. Being that said, there are, and we are very fortunate to have a group of investors that are actually from LATAM. The big bulk of investors that we have are from LATAM. We also have angel investors from the US and England and other parts of the world. A big chunk of it comes from LATAM, and we are very proud and fortunate to have them.
You mentioned in the beginning that very quickly you had built out a COVID test. Talk a little bit about building that out and what it does and why it's important.
In January of this year, when we started following up the news of this virus that appeared in China and that China needed to go into lockdown and, all that happened there, we were following up the news, and then it was published that the sequences for the biomarkers have already been published, and we were immediately understood that there was a potential that this could become a world problem, global problem. So we went ahead and because that was freely published, we went and ordered the proteins, the sequences that we needed, and brought them into Guadalajara. And we started to build over our platform a solution so that we can use exactly the same platform we use for tuberculosis to mount a COVID solution. So we started working on that. And by March, about the end of March, we already had a functioning prototype that would detect antibodies for COVID. As you already know, there are the molecular tests, which is PCR, which will tell you the presence of the virus if you're infected. And there are antibody tests, which is what we did. The difference of our technology with other technologies available, because yes, by now there are already many Chinese rapid tests. There are many tests from the US as well, and many others. What we are doing is that we are detecting not just one antibody, we are detecting two antibodies, and we are also detecting other COVID. And our vision right now is that these tests will contribute to start economic activity in companies, so that when you take our test and implement it in companies, since it's low cost, you will be able to test maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every week, all of your employees to understand their antibody status. And once you understand that, be able to do, if you detect a positive when 2 weeks ago was negative, maybe do rapid contact search and evaluate those people as well, and just be able to control, at least at the company level, the spread of a potential COVID infection. And this will help and contribute to reactivate the economic activity and give confidence also that that employees are being monitored, and in case that you are working there, that also you would be monitored, and just to be able to know everybody's status and to be able to follow up and to be able to take action in case there's something present, and to do the PCR test and the molecular tests if needed, if there's a strong belief that somebody indeed has been infected. So that's basically our vision. Of course, we are also working in another COVID product, but that's still a little bit early for me to comment. But we are continually working on new solutions for new diseases, for new ways to find and to manage diseases.
What books, blogs, podcasts, or documentaries do you like to recommend to people, whether about business or just life in general?
I have recently changed my mind about something. For me, there's no business and there's no personal life in a sense. It's all the same. I mix it all in my mind. I don't think of myself, yes, I am a businesswoman, but I see myself more as an intellectual thinker, hands-on oriented kind of person. So I would very highly recommend a book called Charlie's Almanac. I don't know if you have heard about this book. Great. It is a great book. It's Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett long life business partner, and this book will really get you into understanding the world of Alati's work of mental models. And I believe this is really useful for every area of your life. You have to be able to integrate, to synthesize, to value information, and not only information, but how can that information continually add value. So I would highly recommend that. It's a huge book. It's very long, but it's totally worthwhile. And that would be the first. And of course, I'm very interested in global health. I would also recommend a book by, oh my God, I forgot his name at this moment, but it's called Factfulness. And Factfulness is about global health and the beliefs and misconceptions we have about the world, and how the disease map looks like, how countries compare one to another. It's very interesting, and it talks about population. It talks about level of income, what it means to be rich, what it means to be poor, how the middle levels, like you're sort of rich, you're sort of poor, how that looks like, and how overcoming each level takes you to personal development and therefore social development and economic development. It's very interesting as well. I just don't remember his name right now. If it comes up, I'll tell you.
I just looked it up. It's Hans Rosling.
Hans Rosling, yeah.
If you could go back to when you first started your first company, knowing everything you know today, what advice would you give yourself?
This may be really commonplace, but I really like this advice, and it seems more actionable now than then. It would be about prioritization, and as I said, my life is just one blurb of things. It's not like I don't have a business life and a personal life. I have just one life and just one person. I prioritize everything in the same list, and be really, really, really tough with what stays if in that list, just to be able to make yourself mind space. You need mind space as well as you need exercise, as well as you need nutritious food, as well as you need clean water. You need mind space to think and to download it all. So that, of course, when something comes in, something else goes out. If you start filling all of your time with activities, with something you need to meet or something you need to do because somebody said that you should do it, no, you have to really connect to yourself, to your core being, and be able to say, I will not do this because I value so much my space for thinking. I would recommend that to myself. My mind space, your mind space, everybody's mind space is so invaluable. We all need that.
That's really good advice. What's next for you and the business over the next year or two?
For me and the business. So it's hard to say under this environment what's coming ahead, but my guess is we need to grow the COVID solution as fast as possible to be able to impact in that, and also continue with tuberculosis. Something that has happened with COVID that I carry with me and that I feel like a burden is that the COVID test has disrupted the medical industry a lot. So people that were working in tuberculosis needed to shift to COVID, and tuberculosis is being forgotten in a sense. Not forgotten, but it's predicted that the cases in tuberculosis and malaria and other diseases that are traditionally known for as global health problems will increase in the medium future because of COVID, because COVID is disrupting our economics, our personal economics, our regional economics, and this is impacting people at the healthcare system level, at the economic level. They have economic restraints personally that they didn't have before, and they take them. They were not poor and now they're poor again, and this contributes to the spread of other diseases other than COVID. So my hope is that we can go to tuberculosis as fast as possible as well, because it's also a big problem where we want to impact. Yeah, and personally, well, I'm a mother of two very young children, 6 and 4 at the present time. So this COVID has come and has disrupted everything. As I said, I'm just one person, one individual, and I've need to build over the past 2-3 months a system, continuously iterating my personal system to be able to manage all of the aspects of my life that are of value to me. which is, in a sense, the business, my family, how to keep growing and not stopping. Some things have been taken and say, hey, I'm not going to do you right now. I'm going to wait for a little while. And some things have become urgent for me to implement. So I'm just playing the whole time with my schedule, and I'm playing the whole time with all these balls and trying to eliminate some balls, actually, which I think is the best methodology, just eliminate some balls that I really don't want to tackle to be able to manage everything better.
Well, we're going to be rooting for you to have success and continue to execute on this. It's a huge problem that I'm glad there's people in the world trying to solve. And thanks a lot for being on the podcast and taking the time to share your story.
Thank you, Nathan. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders with our guest, Laura Mendoza. And thank you to Angela Andraca for producing this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend and give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best way to share what's going on in Latin America's ecosystem.